Hi, I'm Dr. Paul Dickinson. I teach tuba and euphonium at Kennesaw State University. Today we're going to be going through the GMEA All-State Etudes for euphonium and tuba in the 11th and 12th grade level. Let's get started with the euphonium lyrical etude marked Andante cantabile. So there are a few things in this etude that I want to be sure that we're looking at as you're preparing it. The first thing, make sure that you're always practicing with a recording device and listening back to yourself so that you're getting the sound that you want and that you're double checking yourself for correct notes and correct rhythms. You should make sure that you're practicing with a metronome at all times so that you're not having to do that work. Always set it to a subdivision, so make sure that you're not just hearing quarter notes, make sure you're hearing the eighth notes as well. That's going to help you as you're tying together these dotted 8 16th note rhythms and also these 16th notes. You have some triplets tossed in there as well. If you want to go to a triplet subdivision, you can. Make sure that you are staying exactly with the big beat. The second thing I want to be really sure about here, the marking is Andante cantabile. We're looking for a singing style. You should have a smooth articulation across each one of these lines. Try to embrace the phrase markings that are already on the page while you're doing that. You should plan your breaths appropriately to match what's on the page as much as you can. Take a nice full, relaxed, going to sleep kind of breath, and then let it out in a long flowing stream across the phrase, rather than a short breath and a hard burst of air at any point in this etude. As you're going into your upper register, make sure that it stays singing and easy in spite of the fact that it's going up to forte and then later fortissimo. As you get louder, don't sacrifice the beauty of your sound. Let it sing, let it be resonant and flowing, and take your time practicing that. Go slowly, do your long tones up there, and do slow lip slurs that take you through the 4th, 5th, and 6th partials, and then the 7th partial, and then finally up into the 8th partial so that you can achieve those A flats fluidly rather than with struggle or pinching and straining. You've got a couple of grace notes tossed into this etude. Make sure that they stay light and easy. Don't land on them too heavily, but keep them clear. Let's talk a little bit about the dynamic shaping here. In a lyrical etude, it's really easy to kind of settle in and pretend like you're only playing for yourself. Make sure that your dynamics are such that if I were, say, as an audience member 90 feet away from you, I could tell very clearly that you're playing soft and then louder, and then soft and then even louder, going from the mezzo piano up to mezzo forte, and then further to forte, and last but not least, all the way to your fortissimo. That being said, this is cantabile, which means in a singing style, not a shouting style. When you get up to your forte and your fortissimo, don't blow down the house, don't let your tone go bright, stay warm, stay dark, and let it be rich. If you've practiced vibrato and you have a gentle vibrato you can add into this etude, this is a great time to show it off. What we don't want is that stereotypical chainsaw vibrato that some euphonium players fall into, where it's just very quick and aggressive all the time. Keep it beautiful, make sure that it matches a singing voice sort of vibrato. The last thing I want us to pay attention to here is going to be pitch. You're working through the 5th and 6th partials a fair bit and then leaping back down. As you're going across those leaps, my suggestion is that you do some mouthpiece sirens. What I mean by that is buzzing not only at this pitch and this pitch, but all of the pitches in the middle so that we're getting a smooth transition. Do this with a drone, which are available on a lot of metronomes and on a lot of phone apps so that you can hear this pitch and match it on the mouthpiece. And then match the next pitch, sliding and hearing every single pitch in the middle, not just a sudden muscular pinch as you're jumping up on that last jump to the A flat in particular catches my eye. Okay, that's a lot of ideas about this. Plan your breaths, watch your dynamics, and play with a beautiful singing tone. Let's move on to the technical excerpt, marked Allegro risoluto. Okay, so there's a few things in this one that we would need to watch out for as well. Allegro risoluto, so we're looking for a quick and lively allegro. Risoluto meaning very decisive with our articulations and with our style. This one's obviously a lot more vertical and aggressive than your first etude, but make sure that you still keep this warm, beautiful tone color. When you're playing your staccatos, don't make them pecky, don't let them be clipped, but do make sure that they are separated. When you have accents, you'll notice I'm trying to land on those a little bit heavier, but it's more of a springy bounce as opposed to just absolutely stomping on the note. Don't overplay the accents. Make sure that we hear them, but keep the tone and make sure there's weight involved rather than just a heavy tongue. For your dynamics, it's marked forte at the beginning. Only forte, not fortissimo. Make sure that you're leaving yourself a little bit of room to get louder, and make sure that you're also then getting much, much softer when you have the chance. Forte only means the average dynamic should be forte. Don't just play the whole thing loud. When you do have a chance to go down to mezzo piano, please take advantage of it. Get quite low so that we can hear a big difference between your forte and your mezzo piano. Later, halfway through, it goes into this minor section. It's teasing around with some D minor implications. Get super, super soft and light on that piano. Again, we need to hear that contrast. As we go towards the end of this etude, we've got more and more 16th notes in the mid-range and then working your way from the mid into the upper register. If you're going to be doing a double tongue here, make sure that you've practiced this slurred first and then add the tongue to that air column versus trying to get really pecky. A lot of young players in particular, and some older ones, end up with this very clippy sounding double tongue. Make sure that it's got a little bit more flow to it and less about tiki 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 and more about and keeping the air behind each one of those notes. In spite of how short a staccato 16th note is, I still want it to be a round pearl of a note. Watch out in your upper register, and then as you're coming back down on your out of the stratosphere in your last couple of measures, my suggestion there, slur your way through it a couple of times and make sure that you're not just completely losing everything at the face so that you're able to center up each one of those staccato notes and let the air get warmer and warmer and warmer as you're dropping back down to your C before you finally finish on your concert F. Don't stay tight and pinched, which is going to be the tendency for a lot of players coming back up out of your 8th partial all the way back down. Make sure that you're getting that warm air back into play. So, mind your dynamics. Be clear about your articulations, but not overly aggressive to the point where you lose your tone. And make sure that you're practicing this with the idea that we still have a beautiful sound that just happens to be dancing around a little bit more. All right, let's change gears now for something really different and head over to our tuba etudes. So the first etude we have on the page for tuba, 11th and 12th grade, GMEA, same category, is the Andante Espressivo. I like this etude. Andante, moderately slow, but moving along, kind of a walking pace is what we're after. It marks it at 86. That feels a little bit bright to me. That's your call. Make sure that whatever you do it beautifully and convincingly. Espressivo, that gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of what you do for your tempo. You can move a little bit forward, you can move a little bit back inside of the line. It doesn't have to just be machine-like and metric. That being said, I do have to pay a lot of attention to my dotted 8th and 16th rhythms, making sure that I'm still having that lightness, do, 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 versus triplet, dom, and really landing heavily on the 16th note. You have triplets later where you get to do that. You have tenuto notes as your pickups to several of these phrases. Make sure that we're getting a nice long stretch of these notes. And 1, or 3, 1. Nice and long. Don't let those have too much space. Let them touch. Let them be a nice full body of sound. Pitch-wise, we're going to be dealing with some issues going back and forth between the 5th partial and the 6th partial. Those notes for the 5th partial or for a B-flat tuba are going to be your D in the middle of the staff and your C in the middle of the staff. For your 6th partial, we're talking about your F and your E natural. The 6th partial notes, F and E in particular, are going to tend pretty sharp for a lot of folks, and the D's and C's are going to tend low. So as we're walking around, our major scale that's being implied at the beginning, for instance, in the very first measure, do, re, mi, do, sol. If we're not getting all the way up on concert D and C, then the E is going to be too far away. We're not going to have that whole step implication. All of a sudden it's too big. And then again in the very next phrase, you have 5th partial concert D that's going to be a little bit low, and then a sharp E and a sharp F if you're not careful. Later in the piece, we're jumping around and going to these notes in arpeggios and things like that. Make sure that I'm hearing those pitches with a tuner separately. Isolate them by themselves. Make sure that you know where that belongs on your ear. Try humming through the line. You can play it on a piano. Buzz it on your mouthpiece while you're having these pitches on the piano and things like that. That's going to help you have a lot better chance of hitting the target as you're playing through this etude. You've got a couple of time implications. You've got a ritardando here in measure 9, for instance. Make sure that we hear that very clearly. If you're moving forward and continuing to keep the forward motion and the rest of it, the ritardando will be quite a change. Make sure that you then come back out of it at the downbeat of measure 11. 3, 1, and 3, a 1. Okay? And then again, the ritardando to the end. It's a gradually slowing down. You don't have to just immediately be crazy, crazy slow, but that's entirely up to you. Use a recording device. You can use your phone. You can use an outside microphone. Listen back to what you're doing and make sure that you like it. And last, let's talk just a little bit about dynamics here. You've got mezzo piano, mezzo forte, mezzo piano, forte. Finally, you get down to piano and then back up only to forte at the top of this etude, only forte, before finishing at piano. Whatever you do with your dynamic, do not sacrifice your beautiful sound. As far as breathing goes, a lot of these phrases are going to be just fine. There's a couple of them that maybe I would do a little differently if I were choosing where to do the phrase. Make up your breath plan as you're practicing, figure out where you're going to need to breathe, and when you do, take a full, relaxed, natural breath. A going to sleep kind of breath. And then let that warm air right back out across the phrase. If you are running low on air and you can't sustain for a long phrase, I would rather that you breathe and come back in with a beautiful sound. So don't sacrifice your sound for the sake of trying just to make a phrase. I don't know that the judges will appreciate that either. Okay, let's go ahead and move on down to the technical excerpt, which is going to be quick waltz. So right out of the gate, we know that the waltz is going to be a 3/4 implication with a little bit more emphasis on 1, and then 2 is going to be pretty light, and 3 is going to be pretty heavy. And this one's written very interestingly. Let's see what it sounds like. so this one is going to boil down to a couple of things. You have to have dynamic control, which we talked about before. It's only forte, and eventually you finally have a double F at the bottom of the page. And then you have piano as contrast. So I need two dynamics from you, full and quite soft. Let me hear a lot of contrast there. The other place you need to contrast are your articulations. I only need 3 of them: staccato, marcato, and your normal accent that you see on the page. Let the staccatos not be clipped, just make them bouncy and light. Let the accents be full rather than just punched, and make sure that the marcatos, these rooftop accents, are short and just a little heavy. So I do need to hear all 3 differences there. Spend time with a metronome, make sure that you're staying in time in these subdivisions, and make sure that you make every note nice and round. If you have any issues with pitch in the 6th partial in your lyrical etude, make sure that you're looking at that here as well. All right, I think that just about wraps it up. If you have any other questions, make sure that you come to the KSU All-State Clinic. That's going to be in early December, the Saturday the 7th, I believe. You can sign up on the KSU Music website. And if you are not 11th or 12th grade, you can find a lot of these other etudes on my own personal website, www.dickinsonbrass.com, or you can email me at pdickens@kennesaw.edu, and I'll be happy to help. Hope this helps you. Have a wonderful time.